Jessica, the Reincarnated Dog. By Hak Jin Kim. Jessica the dog. Saturday lunch is almost ready to be served for 5 of them. On the table of the dining room, a bunch of flowers taken from their garden gives off scent, heightening the smell of the food. Jessica goes near the kitchen sniffing because the smell is so familiar that she can't resist the temptation of talking to Sue, a daughter in her previous life. Sue is decorating the cake with frosted cream and says, "Jessica, a cute girl. Are you hungry? Let me give you a cookie." Jessica looks up at her with eyes full of love, and then she feels watery eyes. But Sue misses it since she concentrates on making food to please her family and a guest. Being a bit awkward, she turns to the living room, where Ellen is with John and her dad. "Lunch is ready. Come on to the dining room," Sue calls them. As they sit at the table, Brian arrives home and joins them, and soon introduces himself to John. Sue passes a big dish of T-bone steaks around, and then a bowl of seafood tomato spaghetti to share. "It may sound flattery, but every dish is amazing," John exclaims. And Jessica has been waiting for a piece of meat in silence. "Thank you, John. You can come over anytime. I don't know what to say, but you look familiar to me." "Were you brought up in this neighborhood?" Sue asks. John responds, "Yes, I was born in this town and grew up here up to now. I live with my mom and her mother, my grandmother. My mother works for a law firm as an attorney. My grandmother was a lawyer, too. But I think I'm gonna be a painter." Tom says, "To me, you look like a poet. But don't take it seriously. As a literature teacher, I'm saying like that. I remember you got an A in my class, right?" John says, "Yes, Mr. Hanson. Brian. I remember you because I bumped into you several times." Brian says reluctantly, "Yeah, I guess so. I used to be hurry for the class, so I don't see anyone before me. Do you have any writer to talk about?" Tom asks. "I was impressed with your writing for the school paper." "Come on, Dad." "Brian. How was your camping? Don't say that I ruined it." "You must have left your friends behind to have lunch with John," Ellen says. "Tell me about it. But it's not that bad to be with John." "John. Don't be sorry," Brian says. "Yep, I appreciate your saying so," John says. "At night in the woods I was afraid that a grizzly bear would appear and attack us," Brian says. "Because I heard there had been a serious attack so that a man died. Surprisingly, he didn't have any protection tool like pepper spray. What a horrible accident it was. I can't believe it. I thought bears rummaged through the garbage can," Ellen says. Tom, as a wine lover, seems elated while sipping the wine. He's second to none when it comes to drink. Meanwhile, putting her head down on the floor near Ellen's chair, Jessica is bored listening to people's meaningless conversation. She is only waiting for a piece of meat, feeling lonely, because no one in the room seems to care about her this time. All of a sudden, Jessica smells beef at hand, and finds a piece of meat on John's palm. She licks his palm after eating it. As their conversation lapses after a couple of hours, Brian stands up checking messages on his cell phone, and Sue begins to clean the table. Tom takes the wine bottle with the glass and sits on the couch to watch a baseball game. John and Ellen make their way to the backyard after Jessica. Jessica runs ahead feeling relieved. At some point she stops to sniff the grass and rolls onto her back, rubbing slowly her head. She says herself, how soft it is. I love this kind of grass. This backyard is cozy. I like that. Anyway, everything in this home is perfect for me and Sue, and grandchildren." Beside Jessica, John bends over a bunch of violet flower and says, "I love to see purple things. How about you?" "Well, I don't know. Believe or not, those who love dark purple color have cynical character," Ellen says. Anyway, everybody has different taste in color. Are you taking swimming class during the summer break? John asks. Why? Ellen says, I don't think you're good at swimming. I think you'd better improve it so you wouldn't have to being picked on by Jeff. I don't care. Why should I care? Huh? John grumbles. Ellen gives a shrug of the shoulders. She still has no idea why she should treat John like her younger brother. Though they are in the same year. She has watched his back since John and Ellen became friends. Hey, do you have time for now? John asks. Yeah, why? Ellen answers. I want to show you where I spent my childhood if you'd like to see, John says. I think I'm exposing myself to you, he mumbles. Ellen and John hop in John's car and Jessica slides across the back seat. Jessica watches her neighborhood pass by the window thinking of her past life. In the state of Georgia where Andy, her previous self, grew up. The weather was not harsh, so that tall trees and woods appear in the neighborhood along the winding roads. He loved to drive along the forest path. In the leafy suburbs, Andy and Jenny Bacon raised their baby, Sue. 1 year after Andy got a job as a P.E. teacher and Jenny graduated from college, Jenny abandoned her home, leaving Andy and Sue, a 2-year-old baby. Jenny went up to the north. From then on, Andy had never seen Jenny. About 20 minutes later, John pulls his car in front of a mansion. Ellen seems to be impressed and says, Hey, what a surprise. You're living such a big house. Oh, let me count how many windows I can see. John says, Don't be silly, huh? This house is too big for 3. When Jessica starts to run toward the front door, as if she deserves to know the house, John stops her and says, Not that way, Jessica. We'll go round to the back of the house. There Ellen and Jessica find a fairy tale tree house. John, you amaze me, Ellen says. John responds, Really? This is what I want to show you. What do you think? Can we go inside? Ellen asks. As soon as John nods, Jessica runs up the stairs to reach the door and pushes it. The air that flows through the room deludes Jessica that she breathes in Georgia. Jessica mumbles, This smell reminds me of a thick forest which is warm and wet. Ellen exclaims, Wow! Interior looks even nicer. I can see views of the outside with floor-to-ceiling windows. What's this? Don't tell me you worked on it. Ellen says, picking up a knitting bag. It's for some wild flowers when I collect them. Ellen says, So, this treehouse is what you want to share with me and Jessica. Jessica, are you looking around to find any goodies? Jessica is a bit embarrassed and disappointed. Because Ellen never seems to try to understand her. To Ellen, Jessica just eats and runs. That makes sense to human being. Jessica doesn't have to take it personally since she's a simple dog. While Ellen is looking around the room, John walks next to her and says, You know what? I envied of friends with siblings in my childhood. My mom and granny were very busy at work. I had been always home alone, though they tried to devote to me. You have no idea how lonely I was when there was no one at a fuss. The home was like an empty temple. As you see, I make things like spaceships. Using Lego blocks and knit when I stay in this room. You can join me here. Ellen says with a smile, I'll pass. I'd rather swim. I love to be involved in physical activity. I think we can enjoy swimming or rock climbing together. John agrees with Ellen that they can find some activity to spend time together. While they are chatting, Jessica feels drowsy and remembers her past life as Andy. Andy's house was located in the dead-end street, so that a large garden in back of the house was surrounded by the lush forest. In that garden his daughter, Sue, played the ball games with him and painted the forest.